There was some opposition. There were some landowners that didn't want to sell. Sometimes there's opposition if a landowner thinks that you are going to either take the land off the tax rolls, or if they're not going to be able to have access to it, or if you're going to sell it to the government, because often people don't like to sell land to the government. We're fortunate because we only take land from willing sellers, and we are very patient about acquiring property.
I think there was skepticism as opposed to opposition. Skepticism that some from me that, you know, because of the loss of water here historically, that it would ever actually work as a wetland everywhere, as opposed to a drier kind of prairie. One of the places, I won't call it opposition, but certainly concern, was from the Drainage Board, the county surveyors, concern about how it might impact flows on Junk Ditch. But the reality here is that we actually reduce flood flows. Wetlands store water. Before it was just farm ground, water would just run off into all of these drainage tiles and ditch laterals and hastily go down Junk Ditch. Now we store flood water by holding billions of gallons, that's billions with a B, of flood water here, and releasing it slowly rather than having it all rush down the creek. And that sort of illustrates a fundamental dichotomy between the proponents of modern drainage. Their goal is to get every drop of water off the landscape as quickly as possible, typically to either enable development or some kind of agriculture. But proponents of managing floods want the opposite. They want water to leave the surrounding landscape more slowly at a more measured rate, so flood peaks downstream are lower and fewer structures are damaged. All of this drainage infrastructure in Fort Wayne, it's kind of creating an illusion of dryness that really doesn't exist. And it's gonna go away at some point.
We know from climate change that it's gonna rain a lot more here in the future than it did in the past. And so that could be a valuable resource as we deal with climate change going in the future.
The trend over the last 100 years is that we have become about 15 to 20% wetter here. And that's true all over the Great Lakes. It's getting wetter. So a lot of these old wetland areas that are now farmed or have some kind of development on it, their days are numbered. If we're continuing to get wet.
I don't know that we could put a dollar value to it. Flood control, how much is that worth? The last time President Reagan was here and the huge flood in the 80s, I mean, I hate to say it, but we'll probably see another one like that someday.
I would guess 50% of the landscape in the drainage of the Maumee Basin was wetlands originally. Now it's a tiny percent, and that means runoff occurs much more rapidly and flood peaks are higher. Another 1913 flood is going to occur, and it's going to hammer all those flood berms along the St. Mary's River. It's going to blow out a lot of those berms if we get another 1913. Actually, it's not if, it's when. It's pretty simple. Nature bats last.
Wetland restoration serve as a great potential for storing flood water, improving water quality. Fish and wildlife habitat's an obvious one. Educational aspects of wetlands in an urban setting. I don't even know if economists can put a true dollar value to the value of 700-800 acres in an urban area that's the second largest city in the state of Indiana.
The more habitat you have, the better. The more connected it is, the better. And so, you know, imagine if it was 8,000. I mean, it would just attract more wildlife. It would just be a more functioning part of the landscape from an ecosystem perspective. And you know, those places just don't exist anymore. And so the reason we have species declines is because there's not enough space for certain species to be. And if we can restore and give them that space, you know, things will come back. We've seen it time and again. It would certainly be a richer, biologically diverse system. Reduce costs associated with trying to get water off of the land. If you just let it do what it's going to do, instead of trying to constantly undo what nature wants to do.
I think there's still a lot of opportunity. I think, this can be made much larger. I think, we can get to 20,000 acres, a little bit at a time.
Let's go west, right? We can't really go into the city too much further, but we can definitely keep going and provide that wildlife corridor down to the Wabash. That's always been the vision, right? How do we achieve that without alienating our neighbors? And I think this trajectory, this path, this timeline seems to work for them, right? We can be patient. Maybe 100 years from now, it'll all be back to wetland through the valley, but that'd be a success.
Definitely, there's about 35,000 more acres of restorable wetlands just west of us on the way to Huntington, with willing landowners willing to sell, willing to restore, partners willing to raise money to make it happen. There's a huge opportunity between here and the forks of the Wabash.
There's a lot of people that are interested in history things. In my case, it's a canal, but somebody else might be a car, the automobile to travel. But what a delight it is to go through these wetlands and see what it looked like if you could go back, 100 years. You can see what it must have been like. They talk about going along and just sitting on top of these canal boats and watching the landscape go by and just enjoying the wildlife. Let people experience what it must look like. Eagles flying in here, in my generation never saw those sorts of things, but now we do.
It is working its way down the valley. I think originally I thought, oh, Eagle Marsh, that's fantastic. I didn't really understand that there's about, 5 more little Eagle Marshes between here and the Wabash or more. And so I think the long-term challenge is to have the corridor more connected. As the climate changes and other things impact the ecology of the area, they can go to this corridor and move with the changes. So yes, the challenge is big, but certainly they're up for it.
It's more of a sociological question. How do we get people to share the same values or mindset, or recognize the value in things, and getting everyone on the same page that should be a collective good, and balancing that collective good versus individual interests and the system we live in and the society we live in. It's a huge challenge. So the biggest thing is changing human behavior.
The easiest thing that I've ever found to do is find the first willing landowner that's willing to work with you and wants to do the project. Finding the money should not be the difficult task. That should be the last thing you need to do. And it's usually not that hard when you got a good project in hand.
People are now much more aware of the environment, and you see a lot more active people, and they are more willing to take care of what they have, because we've lost so much that what we have left, I think people are realizing it'd be nice to have a block of land that still you can get out into. I just think when you find a nice big tree, it is just one of those things that, one, it needs a hug, and two, it's like it kind of almost hugs back. Us tree huggers, there need to be more of us.
I think people already feel like this is a destination, but having more of a structure that people can relate to within the native landscape brings them out maybe a little more comfortably.
The Native American history and the portage from Lake Erie to the Mississippi, and the fur traders and trappers, the towpath trail, the interurban railroad that's no longer. Maybe someday we can have some great building that has all of that educational stuff under one roof.
I think eventually we will get some kind of a nature center. When you can get a number of school buses out here, and you have a number of volunteers that are taking kids in every direction. It is going to be really handy to have a good meeting place. There would be a big porch on the back with a lot of spotting scopes on it, and bird watchers there every morning and evening and throughout the day, and kids running around all day long. And then you have a view like that, it's going to be a real game changer.
I think that's the true secret of making it a long-term value to the region and to the area. So hopefully we're going to get support for funding an education center. I think this one is going to be well-known and well-loved for a long time. It is certainly high quality and a great natural experience. All those things are important quality of life things that are the package that people look for when they're locating, or with the way work has transitioned so much rapidly in the last couple of years, a lot more people are going to say, I can work from anywhere. I'm going to find a place I really want to live. And so I think this adds to the other benefits of the Fort Wayne area.
That's one thing that I love about Little River Wetlands Project is it's really a organization by the community for the community. Everybody gives back and gives all their time and effort so that our community has this amazing resource.
Together we can build something really beautiful. We can involve so many members of the community and make it beautiful and teach people about the importance of wetlands, the importance of native plants. So it's really cool that we get to be able to do that.
For me, my passion's always been the environment and making our environment cleaner. That passion has really driven me. I definitely feel like so many of my life's journeys, stumbles, mishaps, coincidences, all of those things led me to wetland restoration at Eagle Marsh. And I definitely feel like this has been such an important role for me to be able to explain why if we protect and we restore these wetland habitats, it's going to improve our water quality. Along our rivers, you have cleaner water, not only for drinking water, so we can use less chemicals to treat our water before we drink it. You know, it creates cleaner water for recreation, for boating, creates cleaner habitats for those fish that we want to eat. Fort Wayne in Indiana is behind the curve when it comes to clean water and clean air. We need to be actively engaging in our landscapes and how do we clean water. Eagle Marsh isn't going to solve all of our clean water problems, but it's a really good piece to the puzzle. And there's plenty of opportunities in our community to restore wetlands.
It's exceeded everything I thought it was possible of becoming. I had always envisioned that it was fish and wildlife habitat, recreation, trails, hiking, throw in the education component that's been thrown to it with Little River Wetlands, and whether it be children or adults, this place is awesome. I'm glad I only live about 40 minutes west of here because I get back here at least 3 or 4 times a year just to take a look at it.
First of all, Indiana DNR is a partner and a part owner of the property, and I think is equally proud with Little River Wetlands Project of the accomplishment, and very, very proud of the restoration that's been done since the construction project. And DNR is very, very happy with it. I think it's already a fantastic demonstration project of many, many different aspects, including the re-restoration. I think they're a player. They're already well known because of the funding that's come in, and it'll be very useful as a model for future projects in the region.
Our partnerships mean the world to us. We are a small organization. We have 5 full-time staff members and some part-time individuals, but we can't take care of 1,304 acres without the wonderful help of all of our volunteers. We don't receive any tax dollars, so everything comes from either memberships with our organization, the community, involve our local governmental organizations, involve a number of our businesses who help partner with us financially or sponsor different events that we're having, and helping us with our annual operations.
When you're in a nonprofit, Every January 1st, or whenever your fiscal year starts, you start at zero, and you're starting to build up all your revenue to be able to pay for staff, resources, fuel, burn equipment, education materials, so you have all of those different expenses coming in. If you know anybody that would like to start an endowment for the Little River Wetlands Project, that might turn us from just a project and a partnership with all of these different conservation groups into a project that's going to be here for the long term.
So that this land is always going to be here in perpetuity, not only for our generation, but for generations to come.